filibustered the anti-trans legislation for the majority of the session. And the way the Republicans were able to get it across the line was to amend it to include anti-abortion provisions. So they recognize that these fights are the same. It's what they're trying to use to leverage the attacks. I also want to bring it down a little bit into sort of the local level, what this looks like on the ground. And one of the hard truths that we have to reckon with is that change often feels like it comes slowly and the harm comes very quickly. I had Republican colleagues who in the session told me, hey, I know this bill is going to go through. I have to vote for it for political reasons, but don't worry, the courts will take care of it. To which I would always respond, the harm is already ongoing before this bill ever goes into effect. In Montana, we had, for example, a young trans woman who attempted suicide while listening to one of the anti-trans hearings. And we know that because that's how her mother found her, with the hearing up on her computer still. We've seen the fallout afterwards, as Erin mentioned, with a trans speaker being not disallowed to speak at a public library. Just 2 weeks ago, Moms for Liberty went and got 5 books pulled from a library just outside of Billings, a high school library just outside of Billings. And notably, it was Moms for Liberty folks coming out trying to ban books, and the opponents were basically entirely the high school students of that school saying, what are you doing? You're banning a chapter of a manga. You're banning a story of queer joy. What are you doing? So we see these impacts on the ground. But I also want to talk about how the line between I wish I could do something and I am a pillar of this community is razor thin. You know, I started my work in 2020, helping file discrimination claims for people who had been harassed in schools, et cetera. During the George Floyd protests, I worked as a de-escalator, tracking armed neo-Nazis and making sure that they could not get close to Black organizers. And that dovetailed into testifying at my legislature. And I found people who didn't want to listen, plugged their ears. And so I sat down with my senator at the time and I said, I want to do something. I feel like I've got the skill set. I feel like I have so much I could offer. Is this a space I can do good in? And he said, Zoe, not only can you do good here, this is the place your voice is most needed right now. So I fought and I ran. And interestingly, when we talk about what difference that makes, I think some folks often think, oh, if you get one person elected, that, it's 1 out of 100 voices, that doesn't really move the needle. And there's 2 quick examples I want to talk about how much that moves the needle. First off is there was an older Republican woman who was on both of my committees, and she went home every weekend to talk to her QAnon constituents. She had a local QAnon meeting that she would go to. She had pre-filed 6 anti-LGBTQ bills, including chromosomal testing at birth. I spent the first 3 weeks of the legislature talking with her every day, building a connection, building a sense of friendship and care, and treating her, as kindly as we could in the hustle and bustle of the legislature. And at the end of 3 weeks, she pulled me aside on a Friday and said, hey, actually, can you explain the trans stuff to me? I feel like I'm feeling all wobbly about it. And we spent an hour talking, and she came back Monday morning and she said, Zoe, I prayed on it. I want to do right by you. And she pulled all 6 of her anti-LGBTQ bills. That didn't make headlines. People see Republicans censure Zoe Zephyr, Republicans remove her from the House floor. But even with that, we were still making change. Another thing is when you get down to the committee level, that is, our Dems in our Judiciary Committee were 6 people, 2 of which were DSA. And together, we were able to have discussions with the Democrats on that committee and really make sure that we weren't sort of letting go on criminal justice reform, that we weren't, that we were standing up for the things that we needed to stand up for. That ultimately can make a difference. And so I would hope anyone here who has what I would describe as the indistinguishable fire, use it, run for something, fight. And also when I say run for something, I'm gonna put a little pin in that and pull it to the side and say, Actually, the work isn't run for something specifically. The work is to find the room where your voice can do the most good in. When I started my activism, I had a sort of activist partner, and we described our dynamic as she would kick the door in, and I would convince you that you invited us in. Sometimes that is the fight. And if you are doing that with a group, you have that camaraderie, teamwork to make it happen. If you're doing it by yourself, you have to figure out when to kick the door in and when to convince people that they invited you in. And I think with the spaces you have in this meeting and the rooms that we'll break out to later, my hope is that you can answer that question. Where do you think your voice is most needed? So thank you for having Erin and I today, and for the kind comments in the chat. I'll turn it over to our next speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Milner, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the DSA Trans Rights and Bodily Autonomy campaign. I want to thank Zoe and Erin for talking. Although, as we all know, they've outlined the dire state of national political conditions. Our rights are under attack. We're socialists in DSA, so we understand that the fight for trans and reproductive rights is not just as individual issues. We know that the same people who are trying to take away rights from women, trans people, and people who need abortions, they're the same people who are trying to take away rights from people all across society. The same people who want to take away my rights because I'm a trans woman, they're the same people who keep wages low, they keep hours long, they keep people from having health care. This whole rotten for-profit system leaves people exploited everywhere. And so to fight for trans and abortion rights, we need to fight the capitalist system itself. So what can we do? DSA is running a campaign, and a campaign is different from a one-off event. To win back our rights, we have to build a mass movement. And you can't just do that with one call or with one protest. It takes the organized working class fighting together over a long period of time to change things in society. That's why we're trying to build DSA as we build this campaign. It's going to be a series of ongoing, interrelating, escalating events from chapters across the country that point people towards joining in our movement and fighting for trans and reproductive rights. Because we're trying to build that mass working class movement which can win trans rights and abortion rights and end the capitalist exploitation. So the most important thing you can do to join in this is to participate in our nationwide day of action. On March 31st, Trans Day of Visibility, DSA and YDSA chapters across the country will be simultaneously protesting to advance local and national demands. So please sign up now with the link in the chat to join the day of action. But our organizing starts with this day of action, but it's not going to end there. We need to build an enduring local campaigns from our kickoff and day of action. The leaders of our country aren't doing enough to stop the far right now, and so the socialist movement has to step up. This national campaign committee will be here to help you as you do it. Together, we can throw our resources and energy into fighting for trans and reproductive rights, and we can build the socialist movement at the same time as we force concessions from the government and win our rights back right now. So please, take this call as the beginning of our work. Start planning for your chapter's day of action on March 31st, and start planning for a local campaign to put forward a socialist vision for trans rights and bodily autonomy. Join DSA and join us in this campaign.
So I'd like to thank everybody for being here. One of the happiest moments I've had in a long time was watching the names and the states and everything scroll across the screen as everybody logged in. That was really a beautiful moment. Rashad, could you drop the link for the gender and sexuality part of the DSA platform? If anybody wants to check out like the existing concepts that DSA has for gender and sexuality liberation, they're in there. I don't have a lot of time, so I don't really have a lot of time to be subtle. I wake up every day in a country that is comfortable debating my right to exist. I go to sleep every night knowing that being a working class person and an oppressed person has shortened my life. They've already killed me. Best case. What's worse is I look at my partner and what it does to him, right? I know people whose trucks have been set on fire in their own driveway. We all know of the numbers of people that have been killed. We don't really know how many people have been killed, because so many of them are misgendered afterwards. The last time I checked, gay and trans panic legal defense, where essentially you say that the mere existence of somebody was so offensive that you had no choice but to kill them, was still illegal in half the states. That's sociopathy, right? Isn't that what we call sociopathy? It's a really scary time, and they want you to be scared. They tell you that you're weak all the time, that you're one person and you can't do anything. It's just not true. You didn't show up here tonight because you've given up. You showed up tonight because you want to fight. And together, we can fight. Right now, it's emotionally appropriate to be mad, right? When are you going to be mad if not right now? Hundreds of people signed up for this call. Hundreds of people are here now. Recently, somebody checked on the book bans and found that over half of them had been done by 11 people. DSA is a national organization represented in rural areas and city areas. All of us are trained organizers. Every one of us is ready to lead a number of other people. We are the largest fighting force for queer rights in the country. And we're led by the people in the organization, not from the top down. So I'll go through a little bookkeeping now. That was my, I appreciate you all listening to me. I want you to join DSA, right? It's just easier. We're already organizing. We need to be in contact with you. You need to be in contact with us. Join DSA. I would like to ask you to join the Queer Socialist Working Group and the Feminist SOC Film, Film SOC, whichever it is. I'm lost. Get registered with those groups inside DSA. Make them big, make them viable. It should be a legacy of this campaign and make DSA better, right?
Thanks so much, Emma and Sarah, for motivating and for telling folks about our day of action. Ida, if you want to throw the screen share back up. Next, I am to demonstrate that we do have power when we use it together. Uh-oh, my emoji didn't work. That's supposed to be a trans flag emoji. I think you can skip a couple slides ahead, Ida, and it is going to work, right? The one right before the NEC one. But yeah, next up, I'm going to introduce some folks who are going to talk about DSA's electoral program and the elections that we've run at all levels of the ballot across the entire country. And I am, if you could throw up the NEC intros. Thank you, Ida. Yeah, I'm very proud to introduce from DSA's National Electoral Committee steering, Wamik Chowdhury, who has been a longtime steering member and has overseen so many of DSA's great election wins, and also Robe Du Bois, who is also trans, sorry to out you, Rose, but is the chair of our National Electoral Committee in DSA, and helped write the proposal that we also passed last year for this year DSA to start getting involved in school boards. So yeah, I'll hand it over to both of them.
All right, thank you, Genevieve. Hello, comrades. My name is Wamik. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an attorney and I'm a member of NC Triangle DSA, and I serve on the steering committee of the National Electoral Commission. I'm coming to you today from Carrboro, North Carolina, where our school board is currently fighting back against attacks on trans students from our state legislature. So I'm very grateful for every single one of you who's come out today because we need all hands on deck for these fights all across the country. This is my third year serving on the NEC, and I'm really proud of the work that our chapters have done. We spent the last several years ramping up our electoral program, and I think it's safe to say that what we've built is the most effective, most successful socialist electoral program in this country in decades, if not ever. We've elected hundreds of socialists at levels all over the country, and we're very good at winning campaigns. We have a 63% win rate in our nationally endorsed campaigns over the past 2 years. This is happening all over the country, from town councils up to Congress. And we've been enormously successful with our ballot measure work as well, including statewide abortion ballot measure wins in Kansas, Kentucky, Montana, and Ohio. I think those abortion wins are pretty notable, not just because of all the work that goes into coordinating a statewide ground game, but because they've come in places where, from the outside, you might not expect socialists to be winning elections. But our chapters have shown that when you've identified a strong campaign with a smart strategy, and you have the capacity and dedication to execute on that strategy, wins follow. And those wins are important because our electeds are some of the leading voices in the country on trans rights, and they're vital organizing forces locally. We can see that in the successful effort to establish trans sanctuary cities like in Ithaca, where Ithaca DSA's Jorge Defendini helped lead that effort on the Ithaca Common Council, or here in Chapel Hill and Carrboro, where Triangle DSA's council member Danny Nowell is leading the effort to defend our school board, which recently voted against complying with North Carolina's recent anti-trans student legislation. And we've all seen the tremendous courage and leadership Representative Zephyr has shown in the Montana legislature. When there are high-profile fights on trans rights, DSA electeds are there. Our many electoral victories also include a couple of high-profile school board wins in the past couple of years. Rosia Rivas, District 2 board member for the Los Angeles Unified School District, and Missy Zombor, who won her at-large seat on the Milwaukee Board of School Directors just last year. But school boards is also an area where we have a lot of room for growth, which is a big part of why I'm so excited that we're making that a priority in DSA. Our other speakers today have been speaking eloquently as to the moral and principled arguments as to why we should be prioritizing these races. But strategically and tactically, it's right in our sweet spot and builds on our electoral successes. For one thing, when we talk about the DSA difference in electoral campaigns, a lot of it comes down to our ground game. Simply put, we know how to devise and execute on a field plan. We have the skills, the experience, and armies of volunteers. That makes school board races smart choices for chapters purely for power building, skill development, and base building reasons on their own. And there's another reason why school board races are really important for building mass working class solidarity, and that comes from how these pieces of anti-trans student legislation tend to operate. When there are rules that a bunch of legislators try to impose on school districts, what they're asking for is for educators to act as cops. Teachers who are generally underpaid and overworked are now being asked to prosecute the far right's culture war for them. And guess what? Teachers and unions, by and large, want no part of this. Teaching is one of the biggest unionized professions in this country, and teachers' unions tend to be some of our biggest labor allies in the electoral arena. Rocio and Missy's wins were largely driven by union power. And of course, that impact isn't limited to school board races. We see teachers' unions join with DSA to support other state and local candidates who pledge to fight for worker power and use their positions to push back on legislation that forces teachers to police marginalized students. So this is an arena that makes a lot of sense for taking what we've learned and we've done so well over the past several years and applying it to one of the most urgent crises of our times. So get ready to start on this work ASAP. Start power mapping your local school boards. Learn who's on them, learn where they fall on the political spectrum, how strong they are, what's their base of support, what's their fundraising like, when do their terms expire. Look for opportunities, look for places where the harm is being felt most acutely. Get your chapter ready to get in this fight if they're not yet. So that's the call that I'm issuing to comrades around the country, but remember, you're not alone in this fight. The NEC is here to support chapters looking to get involved in school board races. We're soon going to be spinning up our National School Board Working Group, which will be a place where chapters can go to for help with their school board campaigns. And it's also going to be a body that you can get involved with yourself when NEC membership opens up to electoral organizers across the org, which is in the works now. So keep an eye out for that. You'll definitely be hearing about it in the coming months. Also, no matter where your chapter is in its electoral development, you can reach out to our electoral campaigns organizer, Milo, at any time, and he can help with anything from big picture planning to nitty-gritty campaign details. There are going to be a lot of opportunities to get involved with this work. So spread the word, make sure organizers both in and outside DSA know that this is a priority for us, and let's overwhelm our opponents with people power. It's not going to be easy. We know how vicious and dehumanizing the far right's attacks are. We know how established and how money they are, but they are not ready for an organized left fighting back. We've proven that time and time again all over the country. To my fellow cis organizers, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we need to stand in solidarity with our trans comrades, not just in voice, but in action. These are attacks on all of us, so let's do everything we can to make sure our trans siblings know that they are not alone in this fight and that we're going to shoulder as much of this burden as we can. Now, having said all that, I'm now going to turn it over to our NEC co-chair, Rose, who's going to tell you more about her personal experience helping run the electoral powerhouse that is Maine DSA.
Thanks, Wamik. Hi, everyone. I'm Rose. I'm the chair of the National Electoral Committee, and I'm also a member of the NPC, and I'm from Maine DSA. So I want to talk about a couple of things. And first off, I want to talk about my chapter, which I love doing. We haven't done a whole lot around trans rights or abortion specifically, besides just, protests. But our work and that of so many other chapters still has huge implications for trans people and queer people. So over the past several years, we've passed a number of laws through ballot questions, including rent control, increasing the minimum wage, tenant protections, and a local Green New Deal. And a lot of this has really centered on ensuring that Portland is an affordable city for working class people, which not only resonates with a broad segment of our city's population, but especially for the queer community here. I mean, for one, trans people, we tend to be worse off economically, and we need housing and good wages just like everyone else. So these policies help us out a lot. But what they also do is make sure that queer people can afford to move here, to get away from more conservative parts of the state. I grew up in rural New Hampshire, and comparing there to or parts of rural Maine to living here in Portland, where we have this incredible, safe queer community is really night and day. But I've very much seen how things like higher rents are really threatening that community. And a lot of people I know are being priced out. And I think talking more broadly, a lot of the electoral work that that DSA is doing on the national level in different chapters is really about keeping these large urban liberal areas, which are safe for trans people, affordable, not only for trans people, but for the working class more broadly. And I sort of think about it how all these trans rights and trans protections that get passed in blue states don't do us any good if we can't actually afford to live there. So I think even if your chapter its electoral work isn't focused on trans issues, there are still ways that you can talk to queer people and plug queer people into the work in a way that will help our community. And I think another big part of it is just the fact that DSA is this incredible space where trans people, such as myself, can really become electoral leaders. I mean, half of our local electoral committee here in Maine last year were trans. A super majority of our volunteers on our electoral projects were either women or non-binary. And I think this is one of the really great parts about our organization, that we're not only doing things to help trans people and queer people, but it's also a space where we're really allowed to flourish and become leaders and form connections with other trans people and build a community, which is just so important to me. And I care about that piece so much. The other thing is, as Wamik mentioned, DSA is going to be focusing on school boards. I co-wrote the resolution, which we passed at our convention last year, which outlines a strategy of how we're going to be focusing on school board races. And the goal here is that we think that DSA can fight the far right. And the way that we're going to do that is at the local level by taking on groups like Moms for Liberty directly, I was inspired to write this because my mom is a public school teacher, and we were just talking about how the right has made her job so much harder and how they're attacking trans kids. And I was like, DSA should be the ones to do that, to fight that. And not only do I think this is a great strategy, but clearly the right wing does, because there have been multiple articles talking about this new strategy, as you can see from the slide. So I think they're scared because I think they know it's coming. As Wamik mentioned, the NEC right now is developing what the school board project is going to look like. We're going to build a national infrastructure to support and center our school board candidates. We're going to need a lot of help to do that. We're not quite ready to start onboarding people, but if that is something that interests you, definitely keep an eye out, because we're going to start putting the call out. Probably my guess would be in the next 4 to 6 months. That is all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wamik and Rose. I'm going to spotlight myself again, and I'm just going to take a quick second here before we get into DSA's exciting abortion ballot measure work to talk about a really exciting campaign that we're going to be running across the country as part of this National Trans Rights and Bodily Autonomy Campaign Commission, that if you want to work on it, you'll work with me and probably to some extent with Wamik and Rose, and that is a trans sanctuary city campaign. Several cities around America, including mine and Ithaca, because of our DSA council members, have become trans sanctuary cities. Many states have become trans sanctuary states, and passing this legislation at the local level, which basically just says like that we affirm the city is a safe place for transgender people, and we instruct city employees to make enforcement of any anti-trans laws their absolute lowest priority. It's not even entirely about what it does statutorily. What's important about it, and what I'm excited to work on this with all of you over, is that it proves that you have a majority in your city's politics that affirms solidarity with transgender people. And that means so much to other trans people in your city. It also means so much to your state legislators, who, when they see municipalities passing values-based resolutions that support things, they know right away that that means that if they want to get support in that area, they need to act a certain way on an issue that people went out of their way to pass a city resolution for. So if you are interested in this or any other part of the work that you're hearing tonight, and if you're sort of doing something in the background, this is the time to come and pay attention to the chat, because we are finally dropping, after many requests, the link to join the Trans Rights and Bodily Autonomy Campaign Commission, which this call is to launch. And you can find that Airtable link there right underneath the Trans Sanctuary City Toolkit. And you can select in there what kinds of the amazing work you've heard about tonight, that you have yet to hear about tonight, that you want to do in your city. Please, if your city you think your city could be a trans sanctuary city, and I bet a lot of cities with DSA chapters could, mark that campaign track, and let's do that together, and hopefully stage a big action for the sanctuary resolution on our big day of visibility at the end of March. So with that, I'm going to introduce the chair of DSA Cincinnati, Ohio. That her name is Sarah Callahan, and she has helped oversee DSA's participation in every single Ohio DSA chapter's participation in the Ohio abortion ballot measures. And she has some exciting work in the same realm, hopefully coming through the pipeline in the near future. So with that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who's on this call. It's really like just filling my heart with so much joy, seeing how much attendance we have. It's going to be great. So like Jen said, my name is Sarah Callahan. I'm chair of Cincinnati, and I'm also our electoral chair. So I got to oversee our fight for multiple ballot measures, including abortion in Kentucky and Ohio. And then I'm introducing Olivia, who volunteered to be on this call with me. She's our current secretary, and she was our ban expert going into the latest abortion fight. So the first thing that we want to talk about is our statewide initiative. This was not easy at all, but we knocked 12,000, a little more over 12,000 doors in Ohio. And there's a couple of pictures on there of different canvassing that we had. Our canvassing efforts were amazing. We were able to turn out large chunks of people, had socials after. Everyone had a really good time because they were enthusiastic about what we were doing. People wanted to fight for abortion rights. So we had statewide calls about every 2 weeks. And then sometimes it was every week, depending on what was going on. We could share lit with other chapters, which is really useful. If other chapters were, passing out things that we thought we could use or another chapter could use, it was really a collaborative effort, which was really nice. We got a lot of staff support from the NEC. So thank you to those, Rose, while me were just talking. We could not have done it without the grant money and your continued guidance. So DSA kicked ass, frankly, for this election. And you could see it. You could see it all the way through early voting, which I'll talk about later. You could see it with the way people were turning out our canvassing efforts. We got new DSA members who joined just because we were out canvassing. It really was really cool to see Ohio do something together as a state. I'll pass it to you.
So my name's Olivia. Thank you for having me on the call, Sarah. I'm our chapter secretary, and I also ran a lot of the van and outreach operations during our chapter campaign. We were able to knock over 4,000 doors, pulling this together and putting together a new team for electoral work very late into the year, somewhere in July is when we first started. And that was something where initially we did not necessarily think we would be capable of pulling this together the way that we did. And we really benefited a ton from both the encouragement from the NEC people that Sarah just named, and also the support of some of our people on staff. I remember Milo taking messages and calls with us late in the night to make sure that we had encouragement and strategy on how to do stuff. Support from our field organizer, Caitlin, who actually would do things such as stay on to do phone banks with Ohio chapters late into the night. And I wanted to mention my appreciation for their support because it really encouraged us on the idea that we could win this and we can make this happen. We managed to turn out a field operation that knocked over 4,000 doors, where we had canvasses happening Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and one weekend day every week, where we were getting people turned out to fight for this. And this meant that we ended up having about 141 doors per canvasser was the number that we averaged, which is a really intense number for our volunteers to be committing to. And we engaged in this effort, and it was one of the most mobilizing things that our chapter got to see. As you can see in the picture on the right, we had tons of people who got engaged and fought on this campaign. Because what we really learned more than anything was people in Cincinnati and really across the country really do believe in the idea that we should not be infringing on the bodily autonomy of people in this country. And it's something that people were willing to fight for and turn out for every single day. And that was one of the biggest lessons I took from this, along with the fact that we just have to work hard and organize together. And if we can do that, we can win things that people insist we can't. I'll turn it back to you for the next slide.
And what happens when DSA fights? We win. So we won issue 1 in Ohio, which was great. We had a huge celebration party where all of our canvassers came out, and you could just tell the joy that was in the air. Everyone was so excited, and not just excited about what they won, but so excited that they could win again, and that we can do so many things when we fight together. We had unprecedented voter turnout. We had the highest voter turnout in Hamilton County, which is where we live in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was the highest since 1995. I thought I would skate by and go to early voting turnout and then 10 minutes later go to work. I was in early voting. I was in the line to early vote for about 1.5 hours, which never happens in Ohio. You usually go in, there's no one there, and you come out. So I had a very good feeling because when early voting is good, it means that we are doing quite well. So we had a really big win. We were able to not just go on the defensive this time, but come at them and really ensure that we had a constitutional right to reproductive freedom. So very happy. We won through making sure that all of our canvassers had the skills that they needed, that we were constantly making sure that they could develop into good organizers, making sure that they had everything they needed to step up We had canvasser leads who had never been canvasser leads before step up to run those canvases, especially during the weekend nights. So even after being really tired from work, going and leading a DSA canvas because they thought it was something that was worth it. So this campaign meant a lot to everyone in Ohio, and we are very happy that we won.
So obviously the question now is following this, what is it that we're going to do next in Cincinnati and Ohio? And what I can say is, while there's nothing concrete currently like on the paper right now, Sarah and I have both been like talking and strategizing about the future of work in the state. And we think that now is a really key moment for DSA to like take the next step in figuring out how we can fight and organize to actually push for trans rights on a statewide level. And this is something where we've been doing a lot of like data work and research at this point now to make sure that we know what's feasible and what's necessary for it. But it's my belief, just from what we've done and seen, is that when we come together and actually fight for things and push each other to do the best we can to make this world better, we're capable of doing it. And I also believe that people want to fight for trans rights. They do not want to sit back and let right-wing legislators continually roll back our right to bodily autonomy and our right to live our lives the way we choose. So I am going to be researching this because I believe that we have people ready to fight on this front. And yeah, stay tuned because that will be coming from us soon.
All right, and we're gonna wrap up here. We have so much more to win, and we are so excited for the future, not just in Ohio, but across the DSA chapters across the US. We put up a little map here because you can see where we have DSA hotspots. Those are the highest like voter turnout spaces. And we saw this in Kentucky as well. So thank you for having us on this call, and we're very excited to continue the fight, not just here in Ohio, but everywhere.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Liv. I am proud next to introduce two of our speakers for the intersection between trans rights, bodily autonomy, and labor organizing. The first is Jade Kelly. Jade is one of the founding members and the president of CWA Local 7799 in Colorado, a statewide member-led local for public sector library, health, campus, and public defender workers. And I'm also very excited to welcome Hope Fourie. I think that's how you say your name. I'm sorry. She is a steward at the Times Tech Guild who recently announced their contract demands for protections for trans workers. So I will turn it over to Jade and Hope. Oh, you're muted.
Hello, 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 everyone. I'm so excited to be on this call. It's a huge inspiration, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. My name is Jade Kelly, and I am the president of CWA Local 7799, your favorite union's favorite union. And I would be remiss if I didn't start off by thanking the leadership, inspiration, and education I have directly benefited from Representative Zoe Zephyr, the legendary journalist Erin Reed, and the courageous, talented, and very attractive membership of the Democratic Socialists of America. So I just wanted to spend my brief time with all of you tonight talking about the hope that I have found as a trans woman, as a worker, and as a labor leader in Colorado in the new, growing, and revitalized labor movement here in this country. We founded CWA Local 7799 on May Day of 2020. And in less than 4 years, we have grown from just a small group of workers at CU Boulder to a powerful statewide union with thousands of members across higher education, healthcare, public libraries, and the public defender's office that has delivered measurable changes for working people and given a vehicle for workers to fight back and launch ambitious campaigns to fundamentally change the power imbalance for public workers in our state. When you see the list of our unions that have joined 7799, you might wonder what brings us all together. And the answer is solidarity. And I don't mean solidarity as, I don't know, a buzzword or solidarity merely as sympathy, as I've witnessed it being used and co-opted as, but solidarity in the truest sense of the word, meaning recognizing and understanding and truly embracing the fact that we are in the same boat and it's time that we start acting like it. That your wins are my wins. And when an injury happens to one of us, an injury happens to all of us. The hard truth is that all of our public institutions are under attack. We have a common problem from professors to librarians to doctors to custodial staff to frontline workers all across the public sector. We are denied the same rights. Our public institutions have been pushed to privatization by billionaires and oligarchs, and we do have a common enemy who is coming for all of us. We've watched the same billionaires and oligarchs who have pushed racist, transphobic, misogynistic legislation in our country dehumanize, deprofessionalize, and defund higher education, our public hospitals, our libraries, our public defenders, while forcing a false narrative of a broken system, manufactured austerity, and a self-fulfilling prophecy of a defunded public services failing to meet the needs of our society. Their propaganda is designed to strike fear in all of us, but is particularly into the heart of workers. It forces us to beg for our job and bend over backwards to plug those holes. It divides us in the workplace and in our society and causes us to turn on one another, looking for ways look the other way when a coworker is laid off, as long as it's not you, hoping that your silence protects you from the next attack. But we know in the labor movement that silence only gives power to our bosses, and that when we fight, we fucking win. We need to recognize that when we reject their propaganda and realize that we do have the power as workers to take control. We're unionizing in our state to better our working conditions, but more than that, our aim has always been to build the strongest political organization in the state when nothing happens without the workers' consent first. And I want to share some stories that'll hopefully give you some of the same hope that I have found, that organized labor can be and is effective in protecting trans rights and bodily autonomy. One is the fact that despite being a labor union, we have centered anti-racism, abortion rights, queer liberation, and fighting for the public good as central reasons for why we're unionizing the public sector. And we've done it across political lines, different generations. We've done it with different job classifications to demand, not beg, to demand a better world. And we become one of the largest unions in our state in less than 4 short years. As president, I've had to convince Trump supporters, folks who I have absolutely nothing in common with, to join their union and fight alongside us to build the density we need to win. To be blunt, it can be terrifying, but succeeding can also be revolutionary. And we've seen it with one of our newest unions, Pikes Peak Library Workers United, that affiliated with CWA after a trans woman who works at the library was attacked at work, and management did nothing. And they did their best to sweep it underneath the rug. Seeing her safety sacrificed to avoid a PR nightmare and appease the library donors, which include hate groups like Focus on the Family, radicalized everyone, and I mean everyone in the library, and showed us the urgent need that their safety as workers was not a guarantee, and that we need to unite as a union across the public sector to fight back. Pikes Peak Library Workers United is in Colorado Springs, one of the most conservative cities in the country and in Colorado. And they've centered queer liberation as a part of their organizing drive and pushed back against management and major donors like Focus on the Family. It's true that Focus on the Family did donate. Sometimes that's celebrated a lot in our society. They donated a few $1,000s to the library. They received exclusive shelves of the library to display their propaganda in exchange for that donation. But it is also true that they have donated hundreds of millions of dollars over the past decades to fascist candidates to spread their propaganda and pass anti-trans legislation, anti-worker legislation to legally fire LGBTQ workers, and defund public services like the library at the peril of everyone in our society. Their charity is poison, and we found powerful ways to stand in solidarity, to build safety in the library. And despite being less than a year old at Pikes Peak Library Workers United, our entire local has won raises, elected allies to powerful positions, and we're running legislation this year to push back on the book bans and the attacks on library workers that have taken over Colorado Springs to ensure that no library worker will be fired for putting LGBTQ books on the shelves or forced to remove books from the shelf if they believe in good faith that that action is illegal. We're also collecting signatures for fighting for lifting the ban on public funds for abortion so public workers can have their insurance cover their reproductive health care. We're running legislation to ban captive audience meetings, creating case standards for public defenders, and fully funding our public services so we don't have to beg billionaires to keep our doors open and serve our community. Organized labor has given me this hope. It showed me that we can win and that our bosses and our fascists will lose when we stand in solidarity with each other. When we organize our workplaces, recognize our common plights, recognize our common enemies. When we fight, we fucking win. And I encourage you to help our union stand in solidarity with us today. I know you're dropping a couple of links in the chat to demand raises and win this campaign in Colorado. Go to the tiny URL. And if there's anything I want to leave you with tonight, is that the only true effective answer to the rising tide of organized fascism is organized labor. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hope.
Hello. I'm here today I'm a union steward for the Times Tech Guild, and I'm here today to talk about an action that I helped organize at my union. As tech workers at the Times, we have no influence over the coverage at work, and according to company policy, we cannot take part in public commentary of Times coverage. So through my union, we formed a group to find ways that we could make a difference at the company. Our biggest action so far has been to develop a list of contractual protections that would protect trans and gender nonconforming workers. A group of trans and non-binary workers, such as myself, got together to figure out the changes that would be most impactful for us. And this is what we came up with. Our first demand was healthcare with comprehensive coverage for gender-affirming care. As I'm sure many people on this call already know, most policies that help trans people actually help everyone, and this was a great example. Everyone would benefit from paying less out-of-pocket medical expenses, but especially trans workers, since gender-affirming care is so often, unfortunately, out-of-network. The next demand was proactive transition plans for employees. So this would be similar to like a parental leave plan, where with your manager, you would set clear expectations for when and how to tell other employees on your team, and any necessary planning for leaves of absence. The next is trans-inclusive anti-discrimination workplace training, which is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll go to the next one. Gender-neutral bathrooms on every floor of every location. So of the 16 floors in the Manhattan office, there are only 3 floors that have gender-neutral bathrooms, which means that if you have to use the bathroom between meetings, you're definitely going to be late to your next one. The next demand is support for name changes and use of preferred names across all company systems. Right now, non-legal name changes are really hard to do across company systems and have left trans employees locked out of critical systems such as password managers, which then locks you out of all systems, and ironically, the company employee feedback survey. As I'm sure many people here are aware, depending on laws as to where a worker lives or just their personal situation, it is not possible for everyone to get a legal name change. So this is really important. The next demand is a dedicated resource for trans and gender nonconforming employees. We have heard, and I personally have experienced, that trans concerns have been brushed off, redirected to proper channels that prove to be dead ends, and met with corporate niceties instead of concrete action. This resource would hopefully be a place where trans issues at work could be consolidated and action could be taken. And our last demand, which is super important, is just cause, no exceptions. Since we are currently bargaining our first contract, we are still at-will employees, which means we can be fired at any time and given no explanation. Just cause would mean that a third-party auditor would have to come in and confirm that a termination has just cause. Just cause is another great example of something that has benefits for everyone, but disproportionately benefits trans employees who are more likely to be discriminated against and subjected to unfair terminations. So this is what I did at my union, but if you want to fight for trans protections for your union, starting to have discussions about what would be most important to your union is a great way to start. And if you don't have a union yet, coming up with an action like this is a great way to mobilize people. It was actually really, felt really good that when we started doing this action, collecting signatures for this trans demands letter. A lot of people who are really skeptical of the union, or some people that don't ever want to participate in union actions, were really proud and excited to participate in this action. We ended up getting over 500 of our coworkers to sign the letter to management demanding these protections be included in our union contract. And last week, we released a public petition of support that I hope all of you will consider signing. That's all I have today, so I'll pass it along.
Thank you so much, Hope and Jade. I really want to plug in the chat, that there is a link to sign on to the petition that Hope and their coworkers are putting out to the public to ask the Times to respect trans workers. And that if you, whether you have a union or you don't have a union, if you want to organize with other people in your workplace to fight for protections for trans workers, which any workplace could benefit from the kind of things that that Hope said, then go ahead and click the Airtable link to join the DSA Trans Rights and Bodily Autonomy Campaign Commission. Labor organizing will be a big topic of discussion here this year because for Hope and their other trans and non-binary coworkers, there are things that you can control about your workplace, and then there are things that you can't control, but we can actually control quite a bit because we do most of the work. So there's a lot of leverage to make these better places for us to work. I do want to ask real quick, I have another poll. This is, I think, going to be interesting. The DSA membership poll went about how I expected, but I'm curious how many people on this call are in a union or are working on, oh, somebody already launched the poll? Oh no, I have to end the other poll. Okay, now I'm launching the poll. I want to know how many people in here are in a union. So if you could take a second to fill this out. I am, not to brag, my coworkers and I unionized just a couple years ago, and one of our demands in our contract was a much, much better healthcare plan for trans people like me. And I'm already benefiting from that, and I no longer have to ration hormones due to cost, which is a beautiful thing. Okay, we got some people, we got 30 people in here almost who are currently organizing a union in their workplace. That is incredible. Wow. While people are finishing this poll, I am very excited to introduce our next set of speakers. Florida has been in the news a lot this past little while. I won't go into it because I'll let our comrades from Florida explain what's going on and how they're dealing with it and how they're finding solidarity and power with their neighbors. But I'm very proud to introduce two very young leaders of DSA chapters in Florida, which many people don't know is tied with New York for, I believe, the second largest number of DSA chapters of any state in the country. People often think it's just a blue state thing, but Florida is out here. Florida is very organized, and I'm excited to hear from Judith, who co-chairs the Bodily Autonomy Working Group in Miami, and Chiara, who co-chairs the Pensacola DSA chapter, about the political and mutual aid work they've done in their chapters and together.
Yeah, thanks so much, Genevieve. And so I'm going to be getting us started. I'm really excited and inspired by everything we've heard from our speakers already. I think it's really clear that bodily autonomy, the fight for abortion and trans rights, is the fight for our lives. And it's exciting, inspiring to see so many socialists getting involved with that fight and being leaders in it. And it's really necessary, right? As a trans person living in Florida, we're living through the DeSantis administration, the far-right state legislature, and through some of the worst attacks on abortion and trans rights across the entire country. So I'm going to take us through some of those attacks, what we're doing to fight, and specifically what DSA members are doing to fight back and to grow a socialist movement in the Sunshine State. So with abortion, we have a 6-week ban on abortion that's been in effect since April of last year, with abortion clinics in the state facing serious challenges and undue fines that are making it really hard for them to continue operating. Obviously, the 6-week ban on abortion makes it difficult for so many people to get the care they need and to be able to make sure that they have control over their bodies and their lives. Likewise, with trans rights, we've had a ban on gender-affirming care for minors put into place in Florida that is temporarily being challenged by the courts, but is leaving so many trans minors and their families without any sense of what their rights are and if they're going to be able to continue living in the state as the people that they are meant to be. We also have, it's also illegal for trans people to use public restrooms, keep making it more difficult for trans people to be part of public life. And just recently, if the Florida state legislature made it so that our genders can't be changed on our IDs anymore. We can't use the right genders on our licenses and IDs. These attacks have been some of the worst across the country. It makes it difficult for people who can give birth and for trans people to live their lives, feel like they have their rights intact. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, we have Amendment 4 going up on the ballot during this election season that would overturn the abortion ban that's been put into place by DeSantis in the Florida legislature. And DSA chapters across the state are getting ready and are already involved in fighting for this amendment and putting forward a strong socialist class struggle message to go alongside it. So with that, I'm going to talk about some of the work that Miami DSA has done, and also YDSA at FIU, Florida International University, has done. Because while I've been a socialist for 3 years now, I got my start with YDSA, and I think it's important to show just how strategic and important it's been for helping start the fight in South Florida. So first, Trans Day of Visibility clothing drive. This is something that we did last year during Trans Day of Visibility. YDSA at FIU collected donations, collected hundreds of clothes, and held a clothing drive on campus with music, strong socialist speeches, so many DSA members talking to students and members, and members of the community about the fight for bodily autonomy and for workers' rights, and getting people plugged in to a strong socialist movement for bodily autonomy. We brought out over 200 people to this clothing drive, made people feel safe, gave people a space of solidarity, and let them know that there were people fighting for their rights and who weren't willing to be open about it. This clothing drive led to our walkout for academic freedom only a few weeks later. This walkout was one of the biggest things we had ever done up to that point. We brought out over 500 people on campus, protesting, walking out of their classes against not only Ron DeSantis and his policies, but also against our complicit university leadership, board of trustees, and administration, who were more than willing to comply with Ron DeSantis's transphobic policies and his attacks on academic freedom and our rights to speak out about it. This was an inspiring moment for the university. It established YDSA as one of the strongest forces, not only on campus, but locally, fighting for an alternative to the Do-Nothing Democrats and the far-right Republicans. We did this in coalition with grad students and with our faculty union, recognizing that we as students only gain more power when we connect with the people who make our university run. On the next slide, I have a photo of this walkout just to give a sense of how many people we were able to bring out, again, with strong socialist messaging coming from YDSA, strong demands, a demand for non-compliance with the Florida state legislature, demands for our administration to recognize the danger that these laws posed on students at FIU, and gave people the sense that we actually can fight. And when we fight and when we come together, when we unite, that we can also win. So what are we doing with all of this energy? We've brought out all of these people, but what are we directing them towards? Well, I believe that socialists have the best theory of change and the best chance at fighting for this with a class struggle approach. So on YDSA, with YDSA on FIU campus, we're fighting for gender neutral restrooms in every single building on campus, because we won't let the Florida legislature or administration legislate away trans people from public life. YDSA at FIU won an election of a student senator, an openly socialist YDSA member, student senator at FIU, the first in the university's history. And we're using this position to make sure that we can fight for resolutions, for bills that help the student body and actually fight for their rights and recognize these as a political battle that we have to fight for everywhere. This is part of YDSA's National Bodily Autonomy campaign. Just like DSA is fighting for this, so is YDSA. And the experiences that we've had getting students and YDSA members on college campuses across the country excited for this has been such an important foundation for doing this with DSA chapters as well. I'm proud that both YDSA and DSA are running these campaigns. Once I'm done speaking here, I'm going to be sending the form for YDSA members and chapters to apply to be part of this campaign as well. And this has been such a great foundation, not only nationally for DSA, but also for the work that we're doing in Miami DSA, which I'm going to be talking about in the next slide. So with Miami DSA, I am co-chair of our Bodily Autonomy Working Group. We decided to be part of this national campaign and are running a campaign fighting for abortion and trans rights in Florida. And so far, we've had two really exciting events that I'd like to talk about today. First was our campaign launch and fundraiser. We were working with SWAN, that's Stand With Abortion Now, to help 3 South Florida abortion clinics who were at risk of going out of being shut down due to excessive fines by the state. With the Save Our Clinics fundraiser, not only did we fundraise over $2,000 for abortion clinics, we also brought out tons of queer musicians, artists, and drag queens to let people know that we won't be that we have a place in public life, that we can fight for these things and do that while making it fun, exciting, and giving a strong socialist message and strong demands with it. The other event that we've actually just did like last weekend was Queers for Palestine. We're fighting for bodily autonomy. It's one of the fights, it's a fight for our lives. But as we know, there's also a strong solidarity movement for Palestinian liberation happening in the US and across the globe as we're watching a genocide happening in Gaza. So using the campaign that we're already running in Miami DSA, we decided to outline and bring out not only the intersections between queer liberation and Palestinian liberation, but show how uniting these movements makes us stronger, how working together makes us stronger, and how socialists can lead the way in fighting for the liberation of all. It was a super exciting event. We brought out our local Jewish Voice for Peace chapter, Students for Justice for Palestine from FIU, and Canes for Palestine from University of Miami, all together in solidarity, showing that we were ready to fight for this together, fight for both Palestinian liberation and queer liberation. So I think from here, I'm going to be passing it off to Chiara to talk about some of the events that she's helped organize.
Howdy. Yeah, so my name is Chiara. I'm a co-chair of Pensacola DSA. And I'm super excited to be on this call. It's been really moving and motivating listening to a lot of folks. I guess when you speak, sometimes it's said like you gotta think about who your audience is. So I kind of think of my audience a bit more as like folks who are like super new to organizing and maybe like a bit intimidated. What I want to say first of all is like you can do it. And you don't have to do it alone. The great thing about DSA is it's like a huge learning community of like how do we fight for our liberation. And so there are a bunch of opportunities for that. Someone mentioned Milo earlier, our electoral organizer. I can tell you that Milo has helped us in Pensacola go from like 0 to like 10 in terms of our approach to electoral organizing, and also Sarah and Ohio's been helping a bunch. Last year on campus, we wanted to do something on our YDSA, and we didn't know what to do. So we kind of copied FIU's event, and they were super helpful with like talking to us and like getting us like info for like tools they use for like, how they turned out people. And so what we did was like a couple of weeks before this event, we like did like a blitz, like looking for clothes, collecting them at like, the anarchist bookstore and stuff like that, coordinating, like going to like the grocery stores to get like old banana boxes and stuff to hold stuff in. And we kind of did that like super quickly. And we just realized like this is not like the hardest thing in the world. You just need like a bit of a plan, and like you can do it at scale. And then like, you know, if you have something like a sign-in or something at your event, wow, suddenly you have like 150 or so people to follow up with. And so I would say like you can go from like a very small team, like it was probably like 4 or 5 of us, to like influencing a lot of people quickly. And so I would like encourage y'all, if you don't know what to do, look to what other chapters are doing and maybe reach out to them and they can help. Another thing we did on the campus was in fall of 23. Okay, so Ron DeSantis and the far right wing legislature passed legislation, just horrific legislation. One of the items was restricted the ability of staff to support DEI events. So in 2022, they had their own coming out day. So when we came on campus and found out that our staff were not going to be allowed to do that, we talked to them and like got info on like their partners that they had. They linked us up with like this film festival. And so we put it on ourselves. So we started doing it as just so YDSA, but as we started going into it, you know, there's the sexuality and gender equality folks were doing this, or sorry, the Student Government Association, the Women's Studies Collective, and we just like merged up. I wish I took a lot more pictures of this because we had so many people. Even though it got rain checked and we had to go inside, we still had like well over 100 people sign up and show their support for that. And so it was really great to like do coalition work and just like, you know, we had like an idea for a club and we just went out and talked to everybody who was interested, even like, you know, people who maybe at different times we haven't gotten along with. We just brought in everyone like we could. And in just a couple of weeks, it was a ton of work, but we were able to make sure that our coming out day wasn't canceled. The biggest thing we're working on right now that I'm super excited about is campaigning for abortion rights. And like I said, Milo from DSA Electoral Commission, sorry, staff, and Sarah is super helpful. And I really believe that we're going to be able to pass this amendment in Florida. And talking to people about this campaign, people are interested in it. It's widely felt. People, you know, folks who are interested in reproductive rights are getting involved, and it's just been super great. So I'm gonna just drop a link in the chat, and it's the link if you're like in the Pensacola like area or the first couple counties. I would love if you like signed up and organize with us. Really interested in taking a statewide approach. So anybody out in the rest of Florida who want to collaborate on like planning like phone banks and stuff, I like to start like as soon as possible. So you can send me an email at info@pensacolaDSA.org. But like doing this abortion campaign has helped us. Like we've been recruiting people like at the doorstep practically. Like it has been so good for just like growing the chapter when we really didn't know what to do and things were so slow. And it's helped so much with like capacity and like having the ability to like do really hard things, because we got to do really hard things. And I'm just so excited to be in this call launch. And everyone's been saying it to join DSA, but you got to join so you can get in the Turbac Discord and be there with so many organizers that want you to succeed.
Thank you so much, Chiara and Judith. It is amazing to hear what you guys are working on in Florida and how you're bridging like this upcoming like abortion rights ballot measure where you're going to organize across the entire state with like the mutual aid and like coming out day, like solidarity stuff that you're doing at your university. I'm gonna launch another poll here. I'm curious. Also, I'll note for people on this call, Florida is one of the top 5 states in attendance tonight. There are a lot of people. 3 of the top 5 states in attendance tonight are red states, actually. So I'm going to launch a poll, and I'm curious. So Chiara and Judith talked about how easy it was for them to set up these events with these other groups and like provide, you know, clothes for people who are starting their transitions, or to make a safe space on campus for people who want to come out and want to meet other people like them. I'm curious if there are other community organizations in your area, like community centers, queer or racial justice organizations, or mutual aid groups that you could do an event like this with, maybe as part of the Trans Day of Visibility. But some places legitimately don't have other organizations like this, and there's not a strong organizing culture. But go ahead and answer this survey, because we're gonna probably reach out to people with advice. From Tiara mentioned that Judith's chapter helped her chapter figure out how to do this, and that they probably wouldn't have been able to do it without them, but it was so much easier once they had some advice. That's our goal around the entire country, is take chapters who are doing work like this and create resources to teach other people how. So yeah, I am. And also, if you want to get involved in that, I'm going to plug it for the umpteenth time. Join the Trans Rights and Bodily Autonomy Campaign Commission. The Airtable link is there. You can get connected with other chapters who have done work like all the great work you've heard about tonight, and get resources like the Trans Sanctuary City Toolkit. I already put down toolkits on how to do, solidarity events like this. Yeah, so that's the end of our speaking stack. We're a little bit behind in time on our agenda, but everybody had so much great stuff to say and so much great work to show off in their areas. Now it is time for us to do some breakout groups. Everybody's favorite Zoom activity, but I have a pitch for these, why they're cool. We're going to be breaking out into 3 groups. One is safe states, the second is medium states, and the third is banned states. It's very rare that we have like a big event like this where hundreds of people from around the country can come together. Like I said at the beginning, there isn't like a clear national network for this right now. So we're going to do something really cool and get together with other people in similar political conditions whose states are going through the same thing around the country. And we're going to talk through some questions about the patterns that we're seeing and what we can do as DSA. So I am going to launch, or Rashad is going to launch, the breakout rooms, and you can self-put yourself in there. I have no idea what state you're from, but go ahead and click join a breakout room. And yeah, there are 3 rooms. Go join them based on the kind of state that you're in. Nobody's in the breakout rooms yet. Oh, we can stop the recording. However we do that.